Hey, everybody. Welcome to Thursday's Clear Path Leadercast. Glad you guys could join us here today. My name is Craig Anderson. I am the founder and president of Clear Path Coaching and Consulting. I'm a leadership confidence coach, working with leaders in small businesses and medium-sized businesses and corporate executives to help them move from accidental leaders to confident executives. And I know what that is like. I am a person who graduated from college with an English degree and years later found themselves as a senior executive in Fortune 500 companies, dealing with a lot of the challenges of not having an extensive business background, only knowing what I've learned over time, dealing with a lot of things like imposter syndrome and wondering what I was doing sitting at the table across from a bunch of Harvard MBAs. And what I really work with leaders on is helping them to build the confidence in their leadership, to know what they know, to help find things inside that make them a strong and confident leader. So let's talk today about a topic that I think is very important for leaders, especially if you're scaling your company and building a leadership team around you, if you inherit a leadership team in a new role, or even if you've had a leadership team. We talked last time about the importance of putting together an effective leadership team, building it intentionally, getting the right people in the right seats. Once we have that, that's great. The next piece that we really need to be thinking about, though, is how do we build leadership team trust? And it seems like, well, innately, we should trust each other. We're all on a same team working to the same goal. And you'd like to think that's the case, but a lot of times it is far from the case that the leadership team is built and based on trust. And it's an important thing to build. If you've done any research into the value of trust in the leadership team, it really shows you that it reduces stress. It keeps that team aligned and moves that team forward. And, I've been in situations where kind of I'm leading a business, but part of a broader leadership teams and a company. And it's really hard and it's really a struggle to build that trust when people have different incentives or cross purposes or anything else. And if the senior leaders above them haven't built that trust into it and haven't demonstrated that trust, the business is going to suffer. So, what I want to talk about today is a couple things around what we're really talking about when we talk about leadership team trust, what it looks like, what the things are we do that we think build trust that actually don't build trust, and then 5 things that I think you should implement in your business to help build trust on your leadership team. Because once we have trust built at the leadership team level, that trust will cascade down through the organization because they will see that the team trusts each other, which will urge them to trust each other across their different lines of the organization. And what we found is that high trust organizations with a high level of trust have 74% less stress, 50% higher productivity, and 76 more employee engagement. So these are really benefits that can translate into bottom line revenue for the business, more success for owners, executives, and the employees. So it's a really crucial piece. So let's talk about, there was some work done in Harvard Business Review by a researcher, Amy Jen Sue. And she really pointed out, I think, an important thing to think about when we're thinking about leadership team trust of what it really is, because trust can be kind of an amorphous thing to define. It's kind of difficult to say this is why I do or don't trust people. It can be kind of a gut feeling. What she identified as 3 areas that we need to think about when we're contemplating what trust is in our organization is 1, trust and performance. Everyone on the team, leadership team, needs to trust that others on the team are going to perform. That's what builds confidence and dependability and alignment across the teams. They trust the other team members to have good judgment. They trust that they're going to make the right decisions for their business. They're going to make it with kind of horizontal interests in mind, just not their own or the vertical interest to kind of kiss up to the boss. And they want to have that confidence, because if you don't have confidence, it's going to be hard for you to trust your fellow leaders. And then also trust to represent you and your team inside and outside the organization to key stakeholders. That if you're the salesperson and you're speaking about your operations, they want to have confidence and trust that you're speaking well and speaking highly and speaking truth about the performance and different things like that. So those are really the 3 ways that trust can manifest itself in a team. Now, a lot of times we think, oh, so here's how we build trust in our organization. We do things like we do team retreats and staff retreats. But research has shown that that doesn't actually move the needle very much on trust across the organization. Leadership transparency, a lot of people, and I've said this, that transparency is very important. but does it move the needle on trust? Not as much as you might hope that it would. So let's talk about the things that are going to move the needle on trust for your organization. Those are the things that you want to spend your time on and build that first trust level at your leadership team level. And then that will start to move through the rest of the organization. Model it as the senior leader to your leadership team, who will then model that trust to the rest of the organization. Look, guys, I talk a lot about best practices and things to do. I know that I personally struggled with some of these things in my leadership role. There are times, so anyone who used to work for me can probably point, well, he didn't do this and he didn't do that. I can tell you, I've learned a lot through time about what did and didn't work, and I've had time to contemplate on the things I did that did and didn't work. So I understand these are the things that are important. And that leads me to the first one, which is the 5 C's of leadership team trust that we're going to talk about today. And the first one is check your ego. So important. A lot of people think as they rise to these senior levels of organizations, their ego starts to really get in the way. I can think of one company where I worked where a guy got promoted up into a senior rank and it just so went to his head. And was maybe one level below him on the org chart. And I went to him with something and he looks at me and says, you need to understand, I am a senior vice president. You are a vice president. I don't talk to you. I talk to your boss, who's a senior vice president. So if you have something, please go talk to her and have her talk to me. How is that moving an organization forward, or how's it building trust? And it's clear that this individual, that ego went straight to his head when he got that role. And so that's not going to build trust in the organization when you see that. And, I've seen that even on people that I've picked for my leadership team that, it took me a while to see, but that there was a lot of ego where they kind of thought themselves, I can think of one particular individual, thought they were above the rest of my team, thought that they were more competent, more capable, smarter. And, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But regardless, that's not what you need to drive to when you're part of a team. Check your ego at the door. Put the goals of the team above your individual goals. Really start driving that belief in the team. So check the ego at the door. That gets rid of a lot of problems at the leadership team level right out of the gate. So that's one thing to look for. And leaders, when you're hiring, make sure you're pruning for those ego people. Don't bring them into the organization. They will disrupt the organization and hurt it long term. The next C is clarity of roles and plans. So I talked about this recently about really reconceptualizing the way we do job descriptions with a lot more clarity on why of the job description, what the vision is of what they're building, what their key objectives are, their strategies, their priority projects. That is so crucial to get clear on those things, because when everyone is clear on what their role is, what other people's roles are, how those roles intersect horizontally across the leadership team and vertically to the senior leader, that clarity separates out a lot of clutter, gets rid of a lot of potential problems in your organization. So an important piece to get clarity around roles and plans of where the organization is moving forward. Civility. Civility is the third C for building a high trust organization. There's nothing wrong with conflict, and I am the most conflict averse person you will know. There is a difference between antagonistic conflict and healthy conflict. And we want to encourage on our leadership teams and in our organizations the kind of healthy conflict. Now, we don't always need to agree. We don't always need to be 100% in agreement on things. And we should have healthy disagreement. We should have respectful disagreement where we push back on other people's ideas, really kind of push in to try and figure out what's going on. What we don't want is stupid disrespectful disagreement where we tell people they're stupid. We tell people that their ideas are stupid, right? And undermine them. We want to have civility and healthy disagreement on our teams because that's how we're going to make progress. That tension kept in a positive way is what's going to drive our organization forward. And what we don't want to do is avoid that disagreement and avoid the positive conflict, because then what happens is you have the meetings after the meetings where everybody dissects what just went on. No good, no bueno. We don't want to have that going on. So civility, bring your respect to the meeting, work with each other in respect, have those healthy disagreements. The next one is communication. Such an important piece. We have to have clear communication and clear lines of communication. You want to have people talking to each other. I'm not advocating for 1,000 meetings a week. What I am advocating for is open lines of communication. If that requires you to have dedicated time to get things done, great. If you can do it just through hallway chats and pop indoor meetings, all the better. But we want to really strive to have effective communication going on our teams, between our teams. It's such an important piece and it's such an important role to play. I tried to kind of physically embody this in my last business where we put the leadership team's offices in the middle of the facility. And we had a conference room in the middle of that where the leadership team could meet. And the idea was that was where our healthy disagreements were. That's where we had our conversations. That's where we could cross pollinate and have those meetings that were generating and moving the business forward. And when we left that room, what I was always striving for was when we leave that room, we leave the disagreement behind us and we enter out of that room as a united front. You need that on your leadership team. 80% agreement is 100%. So we need to get everybody as close as we can to agreement in the meeting. But once we walk out the doors, we are 100% in agreement. And that kind of communication is what's important to getting you there. And then the last piece of it is commitment. We need to build long-term trust. And commitment is that you are going to commit to delivering the things that you said you're going to do. Nothing will undermine confidence faster than you sitting in front of your peers and colleagues and saying, I'm going to get that done, and then you don't get it done. It is such a crucial and devastating thing when it goes wrong, because that people will lose trusted members of their leadership team when they don't deliver. That doesn't mean you're going to have misses. It doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes. But are you communicating those? Are you giving people a heads up? Or are you dropping bombs when people aren't ready for them, aren't even aware those things are going to come up? So that's what's so important, is to get into that habit of commitment. Do the things that you say you're going to do. And that sounds so simple, but really think through the things you're committing to, understand and communicate how you're progressing on those things. And that's a whole lot of what I do with my clients when we work with leadership teams around building one-page plans to build those pieces so we don't have surprises. So we have regular tracking in place. So those are the key 5 C's to building leadership team trust. 1, check your ego. 2, have clarity around roles and plans. 3, civility. 4, and civility meaning that healthy disagreement. Communication between the teams and meeting your commitments. So those are the things that are really important. So that's all that we've got going on to help build a more high trust organization, starting with your leadership team trusting each other, moving throughout the organization. So we start to see that percolate through the whole organization. So your organization can be more productive. People will be less stressed. You'll have less burnout, less turnover. Net, it is all good stuff for your business. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate everybody who dialed in today. Take care. Bye-bye.